Okay, so you're thinking about buying a home and moving to Everett, Washington. And naturally, one of the first questions you probably have is, can I even afford to live in Everett, Washington? Chances are maybe you've heard about how expensive it is to live in Seattle, but I've got great news for you. Everett is much more affordable and not as scary as Seattle when it comes to cost of living, that is for sure. Now today, what we're gonna cover is total cost of living here in Everett. We're gonna go over 7 different categories, break them all down for you, let you know exactly what you're gonna be paying more for, what you're gonna be paying less in certain categories, just give you a complete breakdown of whether or not you can afford to live here. So if you wanna learn more about the complete cost of living right here in Everett, Washington, stick around, 'cause we're getting after it right now. Okay, let's start things off by talking about how much money you need to be making to live comfortably here in Everett. Now, if you're a family moving here, your household income to live a comfortable life should be right around $110,000. If you're single, all by yourself, then that number drops to about $66,000. So that's just kind of the bare minimum of getting by here in Everett. And if we're talking about comparing, like maybe you want to compare the cost of living from the place you're coming from to the place you're going to, you know, whether it's Everett or any other city for that matter. An excellent resource that I always recommend is a website called bestplaces.net. You can hop onto the website and look up the cost of living for any city. You can run a comparison on the city you're coming from, the city you're going to, and really just dive deep into the numbers, into these categories that we're gonna cover today. And you can make that comparison of each individual category, where you're coming from compared to where you're going to, how much more you're gonna be spending, how much less you're gonna be spending on certain categories. But just a great resource, an excellent website to help decipher those numbers and see what your cost of living is going to be right here. So, okay, let's get into the first category. Okay, the first category that we are going to discuss is transportation, and what they are looking at as far as transportation is concerned, and the comparison here is they're looking at the overall index for transportation costs, including gasoline, commuting, as well as auto insurance, which auto insurance is just ridiculously expensive. Have you looked at your new policy for this year? I looked at mine the other day and I was shocked to see how much it went up with no insurance claims and really good credit. So really surprising, but anyways, I digress. Yeah, the transportation costs here in Everett, a little bit above the national average. Everett checks in at a 113.3, so 13.3% higher than the national average, which, you know, not too big of a deal compared to average, you know, not too much more than probably what you're paying right now. Now, if you're down in Seattle, a little bit more, different story. So Seattle checks in at 137.5, so more expensive in Seattle, which isn't surprising. You know, we're gonna see that with a lot of the categories that we're taking a look at today, but just kind of that's why I wanted to just do this for you, show you how much more affordable Everett is than the neighboring city like Seattle. So just to, you know, show you that, you know, it's not too crazy, it's not too far out of the reach, and you know, you're gonna pay a little bit more than the national average, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, the next category that we're gonna cover is an unavoidable one. If you're a person, you have to eat. So let's talk about the cost of groceries. Now, with this category, what they're factoring in is pretty simple. It's just the average cost of food that you're gonna find in grocery stores here in Everett. Now, we are pretty much average when it comes to this category. Everett checks in at 102.1, so 2.1% higher than the national average, while Seattle comes in a little bit higher at a 108.7, but you know, both of those are pretty close to the national average. More than likely, you're going to be spending about the same here for groceries as where you're coming from, so not much of a difference on that one. Hey, real quick, if this is your first time here, welcome. My name is David Sappenfield, local Seattle area real estate agent, and on this channel, we make new videos every week about what it's like to live, work, eat, play here in Seattle and surrounding areas like Everett, where we're at today. And if that's something that you would like to learn more about, make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap the bell for notifications so you could be the first to learn about the current market here in Seattle. You know, we get phone calls, text messages, emails every day from people just like you looking for help to make their move here to Seattle, and nothing makes us happier. So if you're thinking about making that move, maybe relocating to somewhere in the Seattle area, make sure you reach out, give us a call. We'd love to help you make that smooth move to Seattle. Okay, now let's get back to the video. Okay, the next category we're gonna talk about is health. And what this covers is the average cost of healthcare. It's calculated using the standard daily rate for a hospital room, the cost of a doctor's office visit, and of course, dental checkups. You gotta include that. So Seattle area in a whole is pretty healthy place, right? People get out and about, they're hiking, they're going to the gym, generally taking care of themselves for the most part. Seattle's always considered like one of the healthier cities in America whenever they release those rankings and talk about stuff like that. So that is helping keep healthcare costs down in this region. Everett checks in at an 86.7, which is, what's that, 13.3% below the national average. Seattle's right there too, 88.2, pretty much the same, really close, but you know, you're gonna have lower healthcare costs here just because overall the cities are a little bit more health conscious than average, I guess you could say. So you're gonna save a little bit more money on healthcare as well. So, you know, not everything is more expensive here in the Pacific Northwest, but this is just another example of something that's a little bit cheaper. Okay, if you're comparing the cost of living to the place you're moving from to Everett or somewhere here in the Seattle area, this is more than likely going to be the biggest shock for you, the biggest thing that you're going to have to get used to. And that category is housing. And when we're talking about housing, we're basically just talking about the median cost of an area's average home. And this is covering both renting as well as buying. It does not include property taxes. So we're just talking about buying a home, renting a home, and it's the biggest difference that you're gonna have to get used to here. Now, Everett checks in at a 188, so essentially 88% higher than the national average, which seems pretty high, I know. The median home price here in Everett, you're looking around $571,000. That includes both single family homes as well as condos. But you know, 88% higher than the national average, which again, sounds high. But when you compare that to Seattle, Seattle checks in at a 291.9. So 292% for Seattle, which is almost 200% higher than the national average. Seattle's median home price, $823,800. So much more expensive to get a home, to rent a home in Seattle. And that's just one of the reasons why Everett is such a popular area. You know, not just its beauty, it's just more affordable when comparing it to surrounding areas like Seattle, especially Bellevue. If you're factoring in Bellevue or anywhere on the east side, Everett is going to be way more palatable for you when talking about how much you're going to be paying for housing. Okay, let's talk about utilities. Now, this is one of the categories where you might actually be saving a little bit of money depending on what part of the world you're coming from. But, you know, up here in the Pacific Northwest, here in the Seattle area, we have pretty moderate temperatures year round, okay? During the summertime, it never gets too hot to where we're just cranking our air conditioning, trying to keep it cool. And in the wintertime, it really never gets too cold to where we're having to just blast the furnace to keep the house warm. So pretty moderate climate, which helps keep our utility bills in check. Probably save some money, you know, if you're coming from, you know, California, if you're coming from other parts of the country that are much more, you know, severe in their weather swings. So one of the categories where you're definitely going to save some money here. Now, Everett checks in at 69.2 on the scale, so about 31% below the national average. Seattle's very similar to that, 68.8, very, very close to Everett, not surprising. But, compared to the national average, we're definitely cheaper here in this area, just because you're not blasting that air conditioning, blasting that furnace through the winter time. So it'll save you some money, help offset some of those other higher costs that you're gonna have to deal with. Okay, the next category that we're gonna discuss is miscellaneous. And what miscellaneous entails is basically just your miscellaneous expenses. Things like restaurant meals, clothing, entertainment, education, and personal care items. So all that random stuff grouped together just to give you an idea. So Everett checks in higher than the national average. Everett is at a 143.8. Comparing that to Seattle, a little bit less expensive. Seattle comes in at a 150.7. So just to give you an idea of what those restaurant meals are gonna be compared to the national average and all that other random stuff that you're gonna buy. Just a little more expensive here in Everett than the average, but again, remember, cheaper than Seattle, cheaper than some of those other surrounding areas. Okay, I've been throwing a bunch of different categories at you here, a bunch of different numbers. You're probably just thinking, hey, just give me the overall number. All this stuff grouped together, how are we looking living in Everett? So if you want that, we're looking at 136.2 or 36.2% more expensive than the national average living here in Everett. If we're comparing that to Seattle, much more affordable. Seattle checks in with a 158.1. So both of these cities, yes, we're above the national average, but chances are moving here, you're probably going to be making more money by doing so. So it's going to help offset that cost of living. Beautiful area. You're going to love Seattle. You're going to love Everett. No matter where you end up, it's just gorgeous here. And if you are thinking about making a move, you're getting ready to relocate over here to Seattle, reach out to us. Just give us a call, email, phone call, text message, whatever works for you works for us. Our contact info is popping up on the screen right now. Just reach out. We'd love to help you make that smooth move right here to Seattle. And if you want to learn even more about living in Everett, we have vlog tours, pros and cons. Check out this video, this playlist right here that's popping up. It'll give you all the best information that you need to know about living right here in Everett. Until next time, we'll see you around. Take care. Bye.